guys, and welcome to the first episode of our 2-week series called True Story. And in this series, we're going to be talking about identity, our identity, and how our identity needs to be centered in Christ and who He is. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about things that can get in the way of the way we view ourselves and ultimately then the way we treat others. And I think it's important for us to address these things because these are things that we can let lie underneath the surface. We think they're not big deals, we think they're only small, but eventually it starts to affect the way we view ourselves, the way we view God, the way we treat others. It can change the way we act, the way we love, the way we care. These things can slowly rob us of exactly who God has made us to be. This week I want to talk about something that can seem harmless but can be so destructive. And that's jealousy. And I think we experience a lot of jealousy in today's society. I mean, we can go on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and we can see what people are wearing, how they're dancing, how many likes they have, how famous they've gotten, and we can feel jealous. We can wish we had what someone else had. We could wish we looked like how someone else looked. We could wish that we were as funny as somebody else was. There's something somebody has that we want. And when we see that they have it and we look at ourselves, suddenly we feel like we're less than. We're not as good. And when jealousy can really creep in, what happens at this point is we start to hate. We start to get angry. We start to wish others would fail because it would make us feel better about ourselves. You see, when we become jealous, we rob ourselves of being the kind of people who celebrate one another, being the kind of people who build each other up and lift each other up in what we are good at and how we are gifted and what we can do, which is what God has called us to do. And then instead seek to tear each other down, tear each other apart. And I wonder how jealousy has creeped into your life, because it probably has. I've experienced a lot of jealousy over my days, and some fleeting and some really stick with you. I think my sister and I had a really tough time when we were in high school because we experienced a lot of jealousy, whether it was how many friends the other had, how the other looked, how popular the other was considered. But one point that we really argued on was art. You see, I like to draw. Actually, there's a lot of people in my family who like to draw, but my sister liked to draw as well, and man, she's talented. She's so good at it, but for some reason we could not connect on it because we both wanted to be better, be more than the other, and it created this tension in us where we would wish the other would not do as well, or we didn't want the other to participate, or it always felt like a comparison. It wasn't something that we could celebrate each other in, and ultimately, it created some hostility between her and I. And I wonder where in your life have you started to build up resentment or dislike or hatred out of the insecurities you feel when looking at somebody else, on how you feel like you don't measure up to what somebody else has or what they are good at because you don't have that as well. How are you letting jealousy seep into your life and turn into something destructive, something that destroys relationships, something that destroys your character, something that destroys your integrity? I really want to warn you guys against this kind of jealousy because there's so many examples of it in the Bible. The first is in Cain and Abel in Genesis 4:1-8. And if you haven't heard the story of Cain and Abel, these are two brothers who are seeking to make an offering to God. But jealousy creeps in. And I want to read what happens. It's verses 2-3. Here's what it says. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. You see, we don't know why God didn't look down with favor on Cain's offering, and maybe there was something wrong on Cain's end. Maybe he had a bad attitude, maybe he had bad intentions, maybe he did something wrong, or maybe God chose not to in that moment. But Cain let jealousy seep in. He let the sin devour him. And in doing so, he built up resentment and hatred for Abel, and he allowed it to drive him to kill his brother. He allowed jealousy to diminish his character, to rob him of who he was and who God says he is, and do an act that's not good. And we see this happen again in Joseph and his brothers. If you haven't heard of Joseph, Jacob had 12 sons, and Joseph was the favorite. And I know when you're a parent, you are not supposed to play favorites, but Jacob did. Jacob absolutely loved and adored Joseph openly and more than the rest of his sons. And you know what? Eventually Joseph had a dream that he would rule over his brothers and father one day, and he shared that story. And so the brothers decided to kill him. They were jealous of the attention Joseph got. They were jealous of the things Jacob gave him. They were jealous of just who Joseph was and who he said he was going to be. And they decided to allow that jealousy to change who they were, to make them someone they shouldn't be, make them someone God has not made them to be, and seek to kill their brother. Now they ended up not killing Joseph, but because of one of the brothers being against it, they sold him into slavery. And this is just Cain and Abel in the Joseph stories, two examples of how destructive jealousy can be. Because how do we get to this point of jealousy? How do we get to this point where we're so dismayed by the fact that we don't have what somebody else has, that we want to hate them for it, that we would prefer to tear them down for it? And you might be hearing this and saying, no, not me, I wouldn't do that, but I promise you in some way you are. It's something we lean towards when we forget who God has called us to be, and we allow insecurity and we allow shame to instead be the truth we listen to. And say, you're right, I don't measure up. You're right, I'm not as good as them. You're right, they have advantages that I should have. You're right, they deserve to not be treated well. I deserve that what they have. And these are lies that we can just get caught in and allow ourselves to be trapped by. We all do this. This even happened in the early church. In the early church, new Christians in the new churches were having a hard time feeling compared to one another and figuring out who was the best Christian, who was better, who was godlier, who was more gifted, who was more capable, because for some reason we feel like we need to be the best, right? We want to be the best. And Paul wrote against this. Instead, he wrote about what it means to know exactly who God is so that we can better understand who we are and not let jealousy seep in. Not let jealousy or insecurity or shame or fear take a hold of who we think we are. And so Paul clearly writes exactly how we are made by God. And it's in 1 Corinthians 12, 4 through 12. And here's what it says. And guys, it's important to listen to. It says this: there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone, it is the same God at work. Now to each one of the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. To one there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom, to another a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing by that one Spirit, to another miraculous powers, to another prophecy, to another distinguishing between spirits, to another speaking in different kinds of tongues, and to still another the interpretation of tongues. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and he distributes them to each one just as he determines. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. We read these verses, and I think there's two questions we need to be asking. Who is God? And I think these verses are telling us exactly who God is. God is generous. God is creative. God is a giver. God is a builder. He is just and he is fair. You say, God is good. And he seeks to make us good as well, to give us gifts, to do his good work, to make this world a better place, to do incredible things. You see, God wants us to be able to do good. He wants us to be able to build others up. He wants us to make a difference in the world and to have significance. And those are the things we want. And we can feel fear and shame and jealousy when we tell ourselves that we don't have those things. But in these verses, after we ask who God is, we have to ask, who are we? And these verses tell us that we are uniquely made. That we are uniquely made, that we have a unique purpose, that we are destined to do what God has called us to do exactly with who we are supposed to be. We don't have to have what someone else has and able to be good enough. We don't have to do what somebody else does in order to have significance, in order to do what is good, in order to make a difference, in order to matter. We already matter. It's more important for us to ask ourselves who God is and who we are and seek to build ourselves in the image that God has created us to be with the unique giftings that he has given us each as individuals, instead of trying to be somebody else because we feel like if we are them, then we'll be good enough. Because we won't. We are good enough for who we are right now, and we are more than good enough when we figure out who to be, when we figure out how to be the person that God made us to be. But we can't let jealousy creep in, because jealousy will rob us of joy, it will rob us of perspective, it will rob us of truth. It will rob us of what is good in our lives. So here's what I want to challenge you in today. Where are you jealous in your life? Where are you jealous, and how is it affecting you? How is it affecting you in your relationships, in your family, or with your friends, or with people at school that you don't even know that well? How is it affecting those relationships? Because you see, I was telling you about my relationship with my sister when it came to art, and how there was just so much tension and so much anger and just pain, and we didn't wish each other well. But somehow, someday, it switched. When we were both in college, there wasn't this jealousy anymore. We didn't want to compare each other to what the other could do or how good the other was at drawing or pictures or whatnot. But instead, art became something we connected on. Art became something that we talked about a lot. It became a way for us to build a relationship with one another, and now my sister and I have experienced incredible experiences together because we've been able to look past that jealousy. I have been able to travel the world with my sister, to go to incredible places and take photos with her. I've been able to talk with her about art. This is something that we have been able to lift each other up in. But in order to do that, in order to see each other's uniqueness and how we were each uniquely made to do what God has made us to do, to express our giftings, to express our creativity, we first had to figure out how to let go of the jealousy, how to let go of the desire to tear each other down to make ourselves feel better, but instead be filled with the joy of who we are in God or who we are as individuals, so that we can celebrate one another better. So that we can be present in one another's capabilities and giftings and just joys. So that's what I want you to be asking yourself. Where in your life, where in your relationships have you allowed jealousy to creep in and start to turn you into somebody that wants to tear others down instead of building them up. Diminish people for what they have instead of celebrating them for where they're at. I also would really love for you guys to do something in small groups today. I want you to take time to go around. This could be uncomfortable for you or not, and as sincerely as possible, point out what you see in one another. Affirm one another. Point out what you see that is good, whether it is giftings, whether it is talents, something about their personality, something you think they are good at. Let's encourage one another today. Let's lift each other up. Let's be the kind of community where we can see the way somebody else is made, how God has gifted them, and we can rejoice in that and say, this is what I see in you, and it is good. I want to see you use it more. So do that in small groups today. Affirm each and every one another. And if you feel like you don't know each other well enough, talk about what you think you are good at and you want to dive more into, or that you feel like people don't support you in. And then answer that honest question of, where is there jealousy in your life that you need to figure out how to let go of? Because what we're trying to remember in this series is that all we need to hold on to is who God is and who He says we are. And we should not let the expectations of the world, we should not let what Instagram tells us or what our peers tell us is good or bad define who we are. We should not be looking to social media to determine whether or not we are good enough, we are popular enough, we are pretty enough. That's not how it should happen. But instead, we should be looking to God. So how can you do that today? And how can you figure out to do that for the rest of your life? But first, let's start in small group. All right, guys. Stay tuned for announcements. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Impact News, where
Welcome.
we scoop on what's going on. So we have a few announcements for you guys today, so just listen up because we got some important info. The first is Bible study is now on Instagram Live, followed by a Zoom meeting afterwards from 7 to 8:15 p.m. on Wednesday nights. So follow us and join us on Instagram Live as we talk through either a part of a chapter or a whole chapter in the Bible, and then join us for the Zoom meeting after to experience the community, continue reading the chapter or read another chapter and discuss it. Then what do we have next, Dad?
Well, as I look out the window, I can see the weather is fabulous today. It's mostly sunny. It's going to continue that way. Get out because it's not going to be like this for long, but really great weather. Back to you, Ronnie.
Oh, just the greatest day. But don't you have an announcement for us on something called Impact Lunch, I believe?
Yes, this just in. We are having an Impact Lunch on October 18th. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have games. We're going to have a service for everybody. We ask you to bring your lunch. And then the big news is we are going to do some prison packs.
Yes.
So it's a good cause, a good time. Make sure you're there.
Yes, this is where we pack care packages to be sent to prisoners during Christmas time so that they feel seen, known, and cared about. And we'll have more information over the following weeks on what this will look like. And if you are not comfortable coming to something in person or your parents don't want you to do that, we will also still have Impact Online on October 18th. Now, the final announcement we have for you guys, and this is a big one, is we are going to be changing the time of Impact. So starting October 25th, Impact will now be from 11 to 12 p.m. And it's going to look the same as it has over the last few months, just at a different time. So at 11 a.m., tune in to our YouTube Teach, and then afterwards join our Zoom call or Zoom meeting to have small group. Now that's what we have for you guys today, but it's a lot. So.
Yeah. It's a big change with the new time. Think of it like daylight savings time. We're falling back.
I'm just excited for us to be able to get all of this done earlier in the day so that we don't have any more conflicting schedules.
Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, sounds great. All right, guys, that was Impact News. Thank you for staying tuned. That was The Scoop.